Motion in your step.
Motivation in your heart.
Hello, and welcome to today's Motion and Motivation podcast.
We've put together a study guide for everyone. If you need it, you can grab it from the video description.
Welcome to our deep dive on the art of war.
That's right.
You shared some fascinating excerpts about its early history and all the commentaries, and I have to say, I'm already hooked.
It's really amazing stuff. I mean, it's more than just a military manual, right?
Yeah.
It's like a window into ancient Chinese thought with layers of debate about Sun Tzu himself and, like how these ideas have resonated for centuries.
Okay, so we're talking battle tactics, but also a bit of a history mystery.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So, right off the bat, the excerpt dives into the mystery surrounding Sun Tzu himself.
Yeah.
He's this legendary figure, but we don't even know for sure if he existed.
That's true.
It's kind of crazy to think about.
Think about it this way.
Yeah.
The TSO Chuan, which is, a major historical record from Sun Tzu's supposed time, makes no mention of him at all.
Wow.
So was the art of war like a collaborative work? Was it attributed to him later? Makes you wonder.
It really does. It's like a Shakespearean authorship debate, but for ancient Chinese military strategy.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And speaking of fascinating figures, the excerpt does mention one prominent commentator.
Yes.
Cao Cao, who was, quite the military leader himself.
Cao Cao was a huge admirer of Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
He called the art of war the profoundest of them all on warfare.
Wow.
And he even went so far as to test the principles on women.
Really?
To see if they held up, which speaks volumes about his belief in the work.
Hold on. He tested them on women.
Yeah.
Now, that's a story I need to hear more about.
We can definitely dive into that.
Okay, cool. But it sounds like Cao Cao was a true believer.
He was.
Wow.
And, if you think about it, Cao Cao's own military successes, known for rapid marches and, strategic brilliance, they likely stemmed from applying Sun Tzu's principles.
Interesting.
So even though his commentary on the art of war is brief, it carries a lot of weight because of his practical experience.
Okay, that makes sense. The excerpt mentions other commentators too, though. Did they all share Cao's level of enthusiasm for Sun Tzu?
Well, not quite.
Okay.
You had Tu Mu, who was an admirer of the art of war, but he criticized Cao's commentary for being too brief and kind of obscure.
Okay.
Then you have Chen Hao, who actually found Tu Mu to be too long-winded.
So it's like everyone had a different take.
You have this whole spectrum of interpretations, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's like you can almost picture them all arguing in some ancient scholarly salon.
I know, right?
It makes the text feel so much more alive.
Exactly.
Something else in the excerpt that really struck me was how China, often seen as this peace-loving culture, actually has this long and complex military history.
It's a really important point.
It is.
Confucianism, which is really central to Chinese thought, promotes harmony and pacifism.
Right.
But the reality is China has seen its fair share of conflict throughout its history.
Right.
And the art of war was born from that reality.
So how did thinkers reconcile this?
Yeah.
Was the art of war viewed as like a necessary evil?
The excerpt offers some really interesting perspectives on that.
Oh,
You have Sima Qing, who was a historian and an admirer of Confucius, and he believed that military force was a tool, a way to punish violence and cruelty, and ultimately maintain peace.
Interesting.
It's a very pragmatic viewpoint.
A tool, not an ideal.
Exactly.
That's a very different way of thinking about war than I think we often hear.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really curious to get into the heart of the art of war.
Absolutely.
The excerpt gives us glimpses of key themes.
Yeah.
Deception, intelligence gathering, the importance of planning.
Right.
Where should we even start?
Well, let's talk about deception since you mentioned it. Sun Tzu was a big believer in appearing weak when you're strong, feigning disorder to throw off the enemy, and using surprise to your advantage.
Yeah?
It's all about outsmarting your opponent.
Gotcha.
Not just brute force.
So it's more about strategy and psychology than just sheer military might.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I remember there's a whole chapter dedicated to spies.
Yeah, that's right.
That seems almost ahead of its time.
Yeah, spies were crucial for gathering information even back then.
That makes sense.
Sun Tzu actually breaks them down into 5 types.
5 types?
Local, inward, converted, doomed, and surviving.
Wow.
He understood that, the quality of information directly impacted the success of military operations.
So, like, basically do your homework.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about spies. Sun Tzu dedicates a whole section to foreknowledge. Knowing your enemy and the battlefield like the back of your hand before even engaging.
So doing your homework was a big deal to him. Would you say he was a believer in measure and calculate rather than just like charge blindly into battle?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He believed that foreknowledge was the key to victory.
Okay.
And that it couldn't be achieved through luck or guesswork.
Right.
It required careful planning, observation, and analysis.
In fact, the excerpt mentions that. He says that a leader who ignores these principles doesn't even deserve to be called a warlike prince.
That's right.
Like, he clearly had strong opinions about what it takes to be a successful leader.
He did.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu believed a successful leader must be intelligent, resourceful, and adaptable.
Right.
Constantly evaluating the situation, making decisions based on careful consideration, not emotion.
So having, like, a cool head in the heat of the moment.
Exactly.
Which reminds me of his advice about choosing your battles carefully. There's that part about different types of terrain.
Yes.
And how a skilled leader knows when to engage and when to hold back.
He identified 6 types of terrain.
6.
Accessible, entangling, temporizing, narrow passes, precipitous heights, and positions at a great distance from the enemy.
Right.
And each one had its own advantages and disadvantages.
Right.
And Sun Tzu provided very specific advice on how to approach each type.
It's like a military strategist's guide to real estate.
Right.
He even goes into detail about securing high ground and sunny spots on accessible terrain or avoiding entanglement on difficult terrain.
Yeah.
He understood that, like, the battlefield itself could be a weapon if used wisely.
Absolutely.
So, like, we often think about terrain as just like the land.
Right.
But he's really thinking about it almost more strategically.
He is.
And he wasn't just focused on the external battlefield either.
Right.
He also warned against internal pitfalls that could lead to defeat, recklessness, cowardice, a hasty temper, and overindulgence towards troops.
Yeah. He called these the 5 dangerous faults of a general.
So it's not just about strategy. It's also about mastering your own psychology and emotions.
That's a really good point.
Right.
It's about balance and self-control.
It really highlights how, for Sun Tzu, a successful leader needs to be a master of both strategy and psychology.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Understanding not just military tactics, but also, like, the human element of warfare.
That's what makes the art of war so fascinating.
It really is.
It's not just about winning battles.
Right.
It's about understanding the complexities of conflict.
Yeah.
And developing the strategic thinking needed to, like, navigate those complexities.
And that's what makes it so relevant, I think, for today.
Totally agree.
It's like we can apply these principles to so many different situations.
And what's remarkable is that all of this comes from a text that's over 2,500 years old.
It's incredible.
It speaks to how timeless these insights are.
They really are.
You know, they transcend the specific historical context in which they were written and offer valuable guidance for anyone facing challenges in any field.
Now, that's what I call a deep dive.
I agree.
We've barely scratched the surface, and I'm already seeing the art of war in a whole new light.
There's so much more to uncover.
No, I can't wait.
We've only just begun to explore the depths of Sun Tzu's wisdom.
I'm excited.
Me too.
We'll pick up our exploration in part 2.
Sounds good.
But until then, I have a feeling I'll be thinking about those 5 types of spies.
Yeah, they're pretty memorable, aren't they?
They really are.
Local, inward, converted, doomed, surviving.
I'll have to brush up on my spy skills.
Yeah, maybe we all should.
Okay, until next time.
See you then. Welcome back to your deep dive into the art of war.
Oh, it's good to be back.
We spent, the last part exploring those mysteries surrounding Sun Tzu himself.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
The historical context of the text, all that.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited now to kind of shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And dive into how those principles can actually be applied to real life situations today. Okay, yeah.
Even beyond, the actual battlefield.
Right, because it's amazing to think that something written so long ago could still be so relevant.
It is.
To, like, our lives today.
Yeah.
I mean, I can already see how some of these ideas would be helpful in, like, navigating just everyday challenges, whether it's, negotiating a better deal or making strategic decisions or even just understanding human behavior.
Exactly.
I feel like there's a lot there.
Yeah, and one of the most powerful principles that Sun Tzu emphasizes is the idea of knowing your enemy.
Right.
And knowing yourself.
I remember that.
It sounds simple on the surface, but there's a real depth to it.
Right, because it's like, how well can you really know yourself? And then also your enemy.
It's a continual process.
Right.
He goes so far as to say, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
Like, that's quite a statement. Yeah. Like, that's putting a lot of faith in this idea. It really highlights how crucial self-awareness and understanding are in any kind of conflict or competition, whether you're facing, like, a rival company, a political opponent, or even just, like, a difficult personal situation. Knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as those of, like, your adversary is absolutely essential.
So, like, in a business context, that would mean doing your research, understanding your competitors' products, their strategies, their strengths and weaknesses, like really just gathering intelligence and using that to make informed decisions.
And it also applies to knowing yourself, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Understanding your company's core competencies, what you excel at, where you might be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's about being honest and objective in your self-assessment.
Which can be hard.
It can be.
But once you have that knowledge, like how do you use it to actually make strategic decisions? Is that where Sun Tzu's advice about adapting your strategy to the circumstances comes in?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He talks about, like, appearing weak when you're strong, appearing far away when you're near.
Interesting.
It's about using deception strategically.
Oh, okay.
Not to be malicious, but to gain an advantage by influencing your opponent's perceptions.
So I could see how this could be useful in, like, negotiations.
Exactly.
If you could convince the other side that you're not, desperate to close a deal, you might be able to secure better terms.
Exactly. It's all about psychology.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Understanding how to influence the other party's thinking without necessarily revealing all your cards.
That makes sense.
And this ties into another one of Sun Tzu's key principles.
Okay.
Choosing your battles wisely.
I remember that quote. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
That's it.
Sounds almost paradoxical.
It does.
Like winning without actually having to fight.
But that's the essence of true strategy, right?
Yep.
It's about achieving your objectives with the least amount of conflict possible. Sometimes the best way to win is to avoid a fight altogether.
Right. So it's about being strategic, picking your moments.
Exactly.
Knowing when to push forward, when to hold back.
Yeah, and I can see how this would be especially crucial in politics.
Right.
Where, every decision is so scrutinized. And can have such a ripple effect.
Right.
Yeah, and politics compromise. Yeah. Knowing when to stand your ground and when to walk away from a fight are crucial skills.
Right.
It's not about winning every battle. It's about winning the war, so to speak.
Right. Sun Tzu also emphasizes the importance of swiftness and decisiveness in action. I remember he uses that powerful analogy of an army's energy.
Yes.
Being like, a rolling log or a stone tumbling down a mountain.
He understood that momentum is a powerful force.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
Whether in warfare or in any other kind of competitive arena.
Yeah, a quick and decisive victory is often preferable to a drawn-out conflict.
Yeah.
Both for, minimizing losses.
Right. And I guess like morale, too.
Yeah, for maintaining morale.
So, like in a business context, this could mean being like the first to market with a new product.
Yeah.
Like seizing an opportunity before your competitors even can react.
Or making like a swift and decisive decision to restructure your company or even acquire a rival business before they have a chance to regroup.
And then in politics, it could be about like seizing the moment to pass legislation or implement a policy change while you have on the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing when the time is right to act.
Okay.
And then doing so decisively.
Okay, let's talk about something that always comes to mind.
Yeah.
When people think of the art of war, like deception, like Sun Tzu was a big believer in using deception to gain an advantage.
Oh, he famously said, all warfare is based on deception.
Wow, like that's a very strong statement.
It is. He saw it as like a fundamental principle.
Okay.
A way to create confusion, disrupt the enemy's plans, and ultimately achieve victory.
Okay, so this could mean anything from like spreading disinformation to mislead your opponent.
Yeah.
To like feigning weakness to lure them into a trap.
Right. He even talked about like leaving something odd and unaccountable in the enemy's path.
Really?
To throw them off.
Interesting.
It's all about playing mind games.
Okay.
Using psychology to your advantage.
It's fascinating how these like ancient tactics can still be applied today, even in like everyday situations.
Right. I mean, think about how you might use a little bit of strategic deception in a negotiation, or even just to get your point across in a conversation.
Right.
It's about understanding the power of influence.
Now, of course, it's important to use deception ethically.
Absolutely.
And judiciously. I feel like that goes without saying. But
it's a tool. Right. And Sun Tzu's teachings highlight how psychology can be just as powerful as brute force in achieving your objectives.
Okay, and that brings us to another fascinating aspect of the art of war, the importance of terrain.
That's right.
Sun Tzu had a lot to say about understanding the terrain.
Yeah.
And using it to your advantage.
He who knows the ground, he wrote, and uses it to his advantage will always be victorious.
It's like he saw the battlefield itself as a weapon. Something that could be used to outmaneuver your opponent.
Absolutely.
So while we might not be fighting on, literal battlefields today, the concept of terrain still applies.
Right.
I can think about it more metaphorically.
Yeah, so like in a business negotiation, the terrain might be the power dynamics between the parties, the market conditions, or like the legal framework governing the deal. And in a political campaign, it could be the demographics of the electorate, the media landscape, or like the current political climate.
So it's just about understanding like where you are, the context you're operating in.
It's about understanding the context in which you're operating and using those existing conditions to your advantage.
It's like being a chess player.
Yeah.
Who knows, the board. And can anticipate their opponent's moves based on where the pieces are.
Oh, precisely.
Okay, that's a great way to put it.
And speaking of chess, one of the most important pieces on the board is discipline.
Oh, okay.
Sun Tzu believed that a well-disciplined army was more effective than a larger but disorganized one.
Makes sense.
He famously said, an army without discipline is like a mob without a leader.
It's true.
He understood that discipline and order were essential for success in battle, allowing troops to move and fight as a cohesive unit to execute like complex maneuvers and to respond quickly to changing circumstances.
So in a business context, this could mean having like clear organizational structures, well-defined roles and responsibilities, and like a culture of accountability.
It's about having systems in place, clear lines of communication, and a leadership team that can like inspire and motivate employees.
And on a personal level, it's about setting goals, creating routines, and developing self-control to stay focused and achieve your aspirations.
It's about having the discipline to follow through on your commitments. Even when it's difficult.
Which, we've all been there.
We have.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Sun Tzu's teachings, while they're rooted in, ancient warfare, offer this like timeless wisdom that can be applied to such a wide range of modern challenges.
And that's what's so fascinating about it.
It is.
His insights into human behavior, strategy, and the nature of conflict are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago.
And that's the beauty of The Art of War.
It is.
It's a text that continues to resonate with readers because it speaks to something so fundamental about the human experience.
Absolutely.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
Exploring the historical context, the mysteries surrounding Sun Tzu, and, the practical applications of his principles.
Absolutely.
But there's still so much more to unpack.
There is.
So in the final part of our exploration, we'll delve into specific case studies.
Oh, yes.
And real-world examples of how the art of war has been used to achieve success in all kinds of fields.
I'm excited for that.
I am too. Because it's one thing to talk about these principles in theory. But I'm eager to see how they've actually played out in real-life situations.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I can't wait.
Me too.
Okay, so we've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive really getting into, like, the heart of the art of war. Unpacking its history, the mystery surrounding Sun Tzu himself. And even, like, how those teachings can be applied to modern-day challenges.
Absolutely.
Now I'm ready for the real-world test.
Okay.
How have these ancient strategies actually played out in modern scenarios?
That's the exciting part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Seeing these principles come to life.
Right.
And there's no shortage of examples.
Okay, perfect.
Let's start with a classic rivalry from the business world.
Okay.
Coca-Cola versus Pepsi.
Oh, okay.
The perfect example of how Sun Tzu's principles can be applied to competitive strategy.
Okay, I'm grabbing my metaphorical popcorn.
Right.
How does the art of war factor into this cola clash?
Well, think about the principle of knowing your enemy and knowing yourself.
Okay.
Both Coke and Pepsi have mastered this.
Okay.
They pour tons of resources into market research, constantly tracking each other's moves, analyzing consumer trends, looking for any opportunity to, gain an edge.
Yeah.
It's like this high-stakes game of chess. Right.
With each company trying to, predict the other's next move.
So they're not just reacting, they're thinking several steps ahead.
They have to.
But consumer tastes change, right?
They do.
New trends emerge.
Yep.
Have these companies been able to adapt their strategies over time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's pure Sun Tzu.
Okay.
Being adaptable.
Right.
Responding to that, ever-changing landscape.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the best examples is the Pepsi Challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Pepsi launched this blind taste test campaign to prove that people actually preferred their taste over Coke.
Bold.
It was a bold move.
Yeah.
A direct attack on Coke's dominance.
That's attack by stratagem in action, right?
Yes.
Using a clever tactic to disrupt the market and get a psychological edge.
Exactly.
So what did Coke do? Just sit back and watch their market share dwindle?
Not a chance. They reformulated their product, creating new Coke.
Oh, right.
Hoping it would appeal to, a wider audience.
Yeah.
But there was a huge backlash from loyal Coke drinkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about a miscalculation.
Big time. It's a good reminder that even the giants can stumble.
They can.
But I guess the real test is how they recover, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And Coke did just that.
Okay.
They quickly, recognized their misstep and brought back the original formula, rebranded as Coca-Cola Classic.
Smart.
It was a smart move.
Yeah.
Showing that they were willing to listen to consumers.
Yeah.
And adapt.
Yeah, they turned a potential disaster into a success story.
They did.
It shows the power of, being flexible and responsive even when you're at the top of your game.
Yeah, it's a good lesson.
Okay, so that's a business battle.
Yeah.
What about applying, the art of war to something like politics?
Let's look at the 2008 U.S. presidential election.
Okay.
Barack Obama versus John McCain.
It's a fascinating case study of how, Sun Tzu's principles can be applied to a modern political campaign.
Intriguing. What made this election stand out in terms of strategy?
Well, Obama's campaign was really brilliant in its execution of several key Sun Tzu principles.
Okay, like what?
Building a strong, unified force, choosing battles carefully, and exploiting the opponent's weaknesses.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit.
Okay.
What did that look like in practice?
First, Obama built this really powerful grassroots movement, mobilizing millions of volunteers and supporters across the country.
Okay.
This created this sense of momentum and enthusiasm that McCain really struggled to match.
So it's almost like Sun Tzu's moral influence at work.
Yeah.
Right, inspiring the troops, creating a sense of shared purpose and energy.
Yeah. Okay.
And Obama didn't spread his resources thin. He focused on key swing states and demographics where he had the best chance of winning.
Right.
It was all about strategically allocating resources.
Yeah.
Targeting efforts for maximum impact.
That's classic knowing the ground.
Yeah.
Right? Understanding the terrain of the election.
Exactly.
And where to focus your efforts.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And he didn't shy away from highlighting McCain's perceived weaknesses.
Right. Okay.
Focusing on his age and experience, particularly during an economic crisis.
Right.
This created a contrast.
Yeah.
That played to Obama's strengths.
So a little bit of Sun Tzu's deception at play there.
Yeah.
Using those contrasts to shape public perception.
It was really a masterclass in political strategy.
Yeah.
Showing how relevant Sun Tzu's teachings are, even, centuries later.
It's incredible.
In navigating those complexities of an election.
I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Yeah.
From business rivalries.
To political campaigns, the principles of the art of war.
Yeah.
They seem to hold up across such a wide range of scenarios.
They do.
That's what makes it so enduring, I think.
It is.
While specific tactics might need to be adapted.
Right.
Those, like underlying principles of strategy, deception, knowing yourself, knowing your opponent, they remain remarkably relevant.
Absolutely.
It's like a universal language of strategy that transcends time and culture.
I agree.
This deep dive has been, like, eye-opening.
I'm glad.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for approaching challenges, whether it's in my career or my personal life or even just making everyday decisions.
And that's the power of Sun Tzu's work.
Yeah.
It taps into something so fundamental about human behavior, about the nature of, conflict and competition.
And those things haven't really changed that much over time.
No, they haven't.
I'm walking away from this with a renewed appreciation for strategic thinking.
Good.
It's like having a secret weapon, a way to approach challenges with more awareness, more confidence, and a greater chance of success.
Absolutely.
And you know what?
What's that?
I keep thinking back to what Sun Tzu said.
Yeah.
Every battle is won before it is fought.
It's true.
It's all about preparation, about knowing yourself and your opponent, about making those calculated moves.
I love that.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
So, for anyone listening, go out there, armed with the wisdom of the art of war.
Yes.
And achieve your goals.
I love it.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
Thank you for being such an insightful guide.
The pleasure was all mine, really.
Well, until next time.
Yes.
May we all always be a step ahead.
May we all be a step ahead.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss any of our updates. Also, if you think this video could help others, please share it with them. Thanks for watching and for your support.